Hi everybody. Welcome to McNally Jackson. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and for celebrating this wonderful book. I'm going to make some introductions, but before I do, I wanted to let you all know that we're going to have some time for questions a little bit later, so think about what you might like to ask our wonderful readers tonight. And we're also going to have time for a signing and some drinks or a party downstairs in our bar after we wrap up. So head in that direction. You can get your book signed, you can hang out. It's going to be great. So by way of introduction, Eileen Myles is a poet, novelist, and art journalist whose practice of vernacular first-person writing has made her one of the most recognized writers of the generation. Pathetic Literature, which they edited, came out in the fall of 2022. Their newest collection of poems, Working Life, is out in April. We have some signed copies for you all tonight, so be sure to pick one up. Myles' fiction includes Chelsea Girls, which just won France's Incorruptibles. I don't think I'm saying that right.
Well, nobody will know if you're saying it wrong.
The best foreign novel. Cool for You, 2000, Inferno, a poet's novel, 2010, and Afterglow, 2017. Writing on art was gathered in the volume The Importance of Being Iceland, Travel Essays in Art. They live in New York and in Marfa, Texas. We also have reading tonight Birch, who is the author of Spirit, The Bird Trade, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, Places in the Clouds, Sonic Boom, Ferguson Interview Project, and a video game available for Android, Spacequake by Birch. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Theater Arts from the State University of New York at New Paltz, and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the California Institute of the Arts. She's been published by Grove Atlantic, Great Weather for Media, Autumno Media, The Gathering of Tribes, Veil, Vitrine, Insert Blank Press, Live Mag, Bell Swoop, Appreciative, Belladonna, Spiral Editions, and the Brooklyn Rail. Tom Cole is a writer and artist living in the Lower East Side. His work has been presented at Participant Inc., Petit Versailles, Thread Waxing Space, Art on Air, Dixon Place, Clock Tower Gallery, ICA Boston, Performer, How Arts, and the Boston Center for the Arts. He is a MacDowell Playwriting Fellow and a 2015 Edward Albee Foundation Playwriting Fellow. He heads the new play commissioning program at True Love Productions, where he's commissioned new work by Heidi Schreck, Jorge Ignacio Cortinas, Shelia Callingham, among others. He co-curates Experiments and Disorders, a literary series at Dixon Place. He's collaborated extensively with Anne Honey, most recently appearing in She Who Saw Beautiful Things at the Kitchen. And Cathy de la Cruz was is the creator of writing.
Special guest.
a creator of writing, films, videos, DJ sets, the occasional live comedy set, and more. Cathy holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Arizona, Tucson, and an MFA in visual art from the University of California, San Diego. She currently lives and works in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm going to stop reading and join me in welcoming our wonderful speakers tonight. Thank you again, everyone.
Hi. That was sort of a leading hi. Hi. I'm Eileen, and I guess we'll read in this order, right? We'll just go down. Is that good? Yeah. And so I'm going to act as if you've never heard of this book before, which could be you could just walking along the seaport and you're like, pathetic, why not? So it is. I mean, it does come from. The short version is that it comes from the '90s. You've heard of the '90s, and there was an art movement in the '90s called Pathetic Masculinity, and a friend of mine, an art critic, Liz Coates, told me about it, and it was guys doing stuff with like stuffed animals, dirty stuffed animals, and handwriting and being diaristic. And my friend said it's feminism for boys, you know, and we love this idea. But the word stuck with me, and I thought, what does the pathetic mean in literature? Just, in some way embracing gender in all its ways. And so I carried that idea for a while, and I taught a class at UC San Diego where I taught for a while, and I included Valerie Solanas, Kevin Killian, John Wieners, Samuel Delaney, just a kind of a funky and diverse. It seemed like it was people who were all a little skewed in a way. They were either excessive or kind of coming from sort of a kind of a crazy inadequate place, but always just not fulfilling the norm. Not so avant-garde, not particularly queer, but often queer. But I also it just wound up being sort of my taste in literature. And so voila, my publisher Grove said you should do, because I wrote about it in one of my books, and the publisher was like, you should do this book. And I was like, yeah, it's great, I should do this book. But I was like, when would I ever do this book? I think we're all sort of sick about hearing about the pandemic. So just in some time a few years ago where time itself seemed to change and we all had lots of private space, I found myself unable to work on the book that I was supposed to be working on at that time. And suddenly this seemed like a great idea. And so it was kind of like, I guess my joke about it keeps being that it's sort of often in New York, we see people we haven't seen for a while, and they say, let's have a cup of coffee. And you're like, yeah. And that means I'll never see you again, basically. So I think there are books that are like that, and this was one of those books. But somehow in this strange, spacey time, it was the perfect thing to do. And so every day I thought, well, what of Kafka do I think is pathetic? And the only author I want to mention, I'll read a little bit from not the introduction, but the afterwards. But the only author, the first author I picked was Simone Weil, who you probably know is like a Marxist philosopher, and a Jew who converted to Catholicism. But one the piece that's in here is her explaining why she did not want to be baptized. And it's basically because she wanted to be, as a Catholic, she wanted to be with the people outside of the church, which I think is so fantastic. And so, and it's the way I always feel about, anthologies are always weird because you feel like you never can put everybody in, and there's always people like, why am I not in this book, And I think this book is dedicated to the outside of itself as much as the inside. And we evidence that by being on tour in this fall, because we often go to places where there's nobody from the book. And so we would just bring people from the audience up to read, or invite people who would do an amazing, Lynn Shu is going to do Kafka on May 28th. I think so this book is 700, and it's a big mother. I'm counting every single thing, but it's not 700, it's like 644 pages. And so on May 28th, we're going to read the whole, we're having a pathetic happening. We're going to read the whole thing. But which would take 22 hours. But since we have the whole church, we're going to have simultaneous spaces reading at the same time. And so it'll be like a mere 5 or 6 hours. So just, it'll start in the late afternoon and go into about 9 or 10 o'clock. So if you're free that night, come. Because the thing is, you can just walk out of any room and walk into another room. So you'll endlessly be satisfied, which nothing in the world probably can give you that guarantee. The pathetic happening can. So let me just read, I'm going to read the afterword, and then these guys will read. And if you're still puzzled, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. You're like, well, why am I here? What day is today? This is the last poem in the book, and I want to read this too. And it's by a poet named Will Ferris, and it's called Orlando. There's a lot of poetry in this book because what could be more pathetic than poetry? Left town to collect lack and found light in California is blue at both ends. Some bright weight between, led by wrist into warm, I'm told. This is light you can hold in your hand. I wanted to talk about endings, then sun. You were so kind. It's good and big being here. Did I tell you? I feel like smiling some days. It can't be helped. So here's my afterwards. It was a little funny little cough. That was interesting.
Oh, no, it's a laugh.
Oh. I was never interested in board. It's hot. I'm taking my jacket off.
Take it off.
I was afraid I'd look fat, but you know what? Athletic nurture. We can go with a little fat. Afterwards. I was never interested in Borges until the pandemic. I'm sorry I said it. His winding consciousness really suited the out-of-time feeling that prevailed that first year of the virus when I got serious about this book. Borges was lecturing at Harvard when I lived nearby as a college freshman, and I might have been moping on that same bench one day next to him as he sat facing the Charles. He couldn't stop hearing about the great man that fall in Boston, which is probably why I never read him. In 2017, I visited Bill Martin's writing class at El Quds Bard in Abu Dis, Palestine, when one of his students, Baha Abdia, read this piece about growing up in a refugee camp. He spoke the phrase, beloved occupier. I gasped at the fragrance of his thought. Laurie Weeks turned me on to Con Shui's work. Joe Brainerd handed me my first copy of My Dog Tulip. I think you'll like this, he smiled. When I taught in San Diego, the passionate Christian students from Orange County flat out refused to read Dodie Bellamy's Fat Chance. I remember, I thought about all the censorship going on right now, and I think this is totally a book that is demanding to be censored. I remember a girl literally shrieking and shaking the pamphlet in the air. I am going to return this, she screamed. But that was like one of my students. I was like, this is incredible. But it was like not my idea of what being a college professor was. What I thought was the precise doorway into another kind of consciousness was instead an assault on their values and an undermining of normalcy, which is exactly why I'm including it here. I keep going back to Robert Walser because he changed me. I just read Susan Bernofsky's biography of him. I'm so primed by his humility and his overjoy and his eventual incarceration. Max Brod, Kafka's best friend, who did not destroy his papers after he died, as requested, was an admirer of him. Actually, they both were. Kafka used to read Walser's stories out loud, laughing uproariously. Brod wrote a review of Robert Walser in what he described a kind of three-tiered narration in Walser's work. I think he was trying to explain how Walser was ahead of his time. Like there was a surface realm, that of appearances. Walser's characters were naive and funny about it. Then there was a level of irony, the observant, maybe aesthetic, managing realm. But Brod cited as his specialness, Walser doing this third thing, which he described as genuinely naive, powerful, and Swiss German. Brod was a Jew, and his trip to Palestine 5 minutes before the Nazis came banging on the door is how he salvaged the Kafka we do have. Yet it sounds a little blood and soil right there. I'm wondering about a couple of things. Does he simply mean authenticity? Or like a performative, consistent inconsistency? Walser's vacillations convey the actual awkwardness of being alive. He was a naive guy, writing a naive guy, manipulating the feints and rhythms of him. But he was also reporting from Earth, profoundly being himself in a dangerous way. Not dangerous because it's bad, but it can't stay inside the lines. I think of Duchamp's last day alive in Paris when he went looking for a book about geometric shapes accompanied by 3D glasses, which took a simple line drawing into another dimension. He also bought a book of funny stories, which he entertained his guests with that night, because an essential part of Duchamp's project was laughter. As a man of the future, he knew that laughter was dimensional. New uncharted space, unoccupied. When Simone Weil explains why she won't get baptized, I have to admit I find it tremendously funny. Her carefulness, her assertiveness that if she stayed out here with the heathens, she could do more for the world as a Christian. Pathetic, yes. Is the hand a genital? Not to change the subject. There's so much to say about the hand, and I'd rather let Sadia Hartman say it. But in general, the hand is just way more pathetic than the computer. It's the other side of felt. What about religion? There's a lot of God in this art. There's trans people in here, but gender, truth be told, is always trans. Bullying is how the regulars keep themselves in line by finding a shill. No one's more pathetic than Jesus. Is Christianity the people who killed him or didn't? The violence is simply in there. I include a small slab of Valerie Solanas' Up Your Ass, because this play was the reason she shot Andy Warhol pretty much. He wouldn't produce it. He had one of the only 2 copies in the world, and he lost it. He made it less in the wrong way. What's pathetic tends to be massively true. Its triumph is like being a good stand-up, not a great one, or maybe like being any stand-up, since no one's great for that long. It's just a flash or a shift. Its glory is at that moment when it opens the box and the unlikely steps out and looks around. Everything that happened right before the bang, or the laughter, or the applause. In a despotic or theocratic culture, trans people are always pathetic, but I think, at least in America where I sit, we have passed out of the most overt we have passed out of, I don't know, who wrote this? We have passed out of the most overt abject of that phase, not because Joe Biden won, but because Donald Trump didn't. I didn't see it last night, but Jupiter, God, these sentences are getting weirder. I didn't see it, but last night was the Jupiter conjunct Saturn transit, and we are on the cusp, it's just a weird sentence, and we are on the cusp of a major shift. This Cathy is here who tells me all this stuff. She's like, do you know that Jupiter is conjuncting Saturn right now? That's why you feel that way. I don't know why Atha Jaffa included the surface of the sun and love as the message, but it's ineluctably true. He felt these scales, that giant bounce from here to there, were ready to speak. I love in Sparrow's piece when he shares, this is like one big trailer, actually.
Yeah.
I love in Sparrow's piece when he shares a snippet from Abraham Lincoln's famous lost speech. We are all part kings here. If you bow to one man, you must bow to all. Indeed, that's what the Buddha says too. And Thich Nhat Hanh said that in the 21st century, the Buddha is a group. So that if you bow to one man, that is what you do. You bow to everyone. But what about Layli Long Soldier's masterful poem, 38? The Dakota men that Lincoln condemned to swing by the neck until dead for fighting back. When did he bow to them? It was a postscript. It's a dictionary, really. I've been assembling this dictionary all my life. I think everybody should be able to pick a word that moves them and occupy it. Time does that over scores or hundreds of years, and many voices pour over it like the ocean, like something in so many hands. That's how a word shifts. Can you build a word collectively, assemble a word, like a small bird singing, its chest pushing in and out, flaunting its breath like a deity before it flies away? It's almost a poem. Little bird, so proud. Thanks. Incredible Mikaela Cruz, special guest tonight.
I don't know what transits we're in right now. I just know that we're pre-shadow Mercury retrograde. Alright, I'm going to read two poems from Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz. They were translated by Joan Larkin and Jaime Manrique. Alright, the first one is called Inez, I have to gloat, you're gorgeous. Inez, I have to gloat, you're gorgeous, and you love me, all this. Pleasure, I'll never be the same. When you're jealous, I'm a trembling thread. And when you flirt in front of me, I die. You flaunt those hips to drive me wild. One thrust, you're squandering the honey that makes me high. Save it for me, Inez. When you cover me with kisses, I'm transformed. When you're angry with me, I can't breathe. When you go out, I lie awake all night. Still, Inez, none of this really matters. Just take me to bed where I like it, with my wineskin and your succulent worm. And this one is called Inez, when someone tells you you're a bitch. Inez, when someone tells you you're a bitch, you've got a million comebacks. I'm supposed to think you're some old woman full of aches and creaks. That's your genius, dear. You cover your shit. You have a dirty mouth. You love to use it. Once you start, no magpie can compete. You're louder than a string of firecrackers. You thrive on noise. You love to make a stink. You crank out lies until a girl can't think. Your charms are much exaggerated still, Inez. The problem isn't you, you cruel pussy. The way I love you is a sin, I know it, but the way you fuck me is no trick. Your hard-on's real, and I'm a field, just waiting to be plowed.
Oh my God, my zipper was down. That's so pathetic. and I got something on my shirt just a minute ago. And Eileen was saying, what's more pathetic than poetry? And I often think like theater. Maybe it's a second runner-up. I'm reading from a play, and I'm a playwright, and plays never get done, and It's just so embarrassing with like costumes and makeup and stuff like that. And speaking of theater, just to kind of like say something more about the May 28th event of Pathetic Literature. We think it's going to be really theatrical. We have dance happening and all kinds of things, music. So I hope you come. It's going to be super fun. And it's free. So I'm reading from my play, The Tyranny of Structurelessness. And thank you, Eileen, and thank you, bookstore. We're really thrilled to be here. And this is kind of a sort of like 2/3 of the way through the play. And the character has decided to try to go off antidepressants for the second time. Light change. I'm tapering from my off-label high dosages of Effexor, and I go from 375 milligrams to 300 milligrams. And I start to listen to the radio. And it is my sincere feeling that the radio, combined with the electromagnetic tear in my ass, in turn created a tear in the space-time continuum, and we've all been transported to 1980. But I can't explain why. Maybe it's Y2K, maybe it's Zika, maybe it's global warming, or the Montauk Project, a secret governmental experiment where the scientists believe nerves in the sphincters, when combined with extreme Telsa coils, electromagnetic pulses, and radio transmissions, led to psychic binding and a tear in the space-time continuum for the subject and everyone within a 25-foot radius of the point of insertion into the anus. It happened. Lots of people missing from public parks. And now I'm at 150 milligrams of Effexor. Thinking, you know, like hours and hours a day, nonstop since Wednesday. I've just had this breakthrough, and I feel really happy right now. And I don't think it's an illusional breakthrough, but I'm going to finish up all my projects that are computer-based, and then in March, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to work on totally, you know, step-by-step, disengaging from doing stuff with computers that I used to do in other ways, like writing with a pen on paper or reading a book, and I will work, but I am not going to work in front of a computer. So that's just going to be my compass. And stop listening to the radio on behalf of the electromagnetic tear in my sphincter. It's going to be an exploratory step-by-step process, kind of like a project. I think I'm going to do it. I wanted to tell you because I'm so excited, because I've just been going through agonizing. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't live like this anymore. Light change. I read this essay called The Tyranny of Structurelessness by Joe Freeman, about how when feminist consciousness raising groups tried a non-hierarchical approach to organizing, an unspoken tyranny arose that was much worse than if they had just had some structure. 2 quotes from the essay. Contrary to what we would like to believe, there is no such thing as a structureless group. People would try to use the structureless groups out of a blind belief that no other means could possibly be anything but oppressive. Light change. And as a child, I wanted to be a slave, to be tied up. I once handcuffed myself to a desk at school and said, "Someone did this to me." and I wanted to be split up. Night has 100 eyes, more like 1,000,000, I think. So a rough time, spiraling out of control, back to shooting up meth and sex where men beat the shit out of me regularly, and I knew I had to get sober. Let's see, ecstasy, GHB, Special K, pot, Jack Daniels, Xanax, meth. I used to think I wasn't shooting up a lot, but then when I ran out, I'd go to the drawer and smoke the blood out of all the remaining needles, and there were a lot of needles. The first thing that happened was that someone organized an orgy in my apartment while I was coming in and out of consciousness, so I don't remember anything, but I was physically active during part of it. And someone attending the orgy brought luggage with him. Turned out this luggage, all of his belongings, so when the orgy was over, he was moved in. He told me he was from Iran, but then I met someone later who said, "Oh, he's just a regular guy from Michigan." and he carried a book in his bag, History of America. And I only ever saw him eat an avocado and M&Ms. The day he moved in, my birthday, nobody from my real life remembered, but he knew. And we sat on a bare mattress, stained, the orgy over. He took me in his arms, and eating an M&M, his tooth fell out. And later, when I realized he was reaching the limit of squatters' rights, I told him if he wanted to stay with me, we both had to get sober. He pretended to love my dogs, like, don't kick me out, I can't live without your dogs. So I left some drugs, I left out some drugs. I knew he couldn't resist, and when he did them, I asked him to move, which was kind of a dick move on my part. But he wouldn't go, he wouldn't budge. He'd leave for orgies, he was also hooking, I don't know. But he left bags and bags of stuff multiplying, and when asked to leave, he'd cry. And we all know a crying queen is a scheming queen. I still didn't know his name, and this part about the name seemed insane, that in this part of my life I was dispatching with the triviality of names. He went to a sex party, and while there I called, I'm getting in a car and bringing all your stuff. If you don't come meet me, I'm gonna leave your shit on the street. We met at the Dunkin' Donuts on 8th Avenue and 24th Street, his home away from home, Wi-Fi, bathroom to shoot up in. I showed him his stuff in the trunk, gave him $200 and then paid the driver. He cried for the dogs, and then I never heard from him again. As soon as I was rid of him, I knew I loved him, wanted him back. We were meant to be together. God had brought us together. Suddenly it all switched, and I was besotted, forlorn, wanted to switch places with him. Freaky Friday, leave my body, go into his, the pain of detox I'd experienced for him once, and then again later for me. 2 detoxes. But in the end I could only fix myself. Was sick a long time. Walking down 7th Avenue, 6 months later, I ran into him. A potbelly, stumbling, carrying a table lamp for reading, limp, drooped over, a dying plant. And around the bottom, a brown plastic bag, yellow ties leaked off like liquid. He didn't recognize me. For completism, I wanted to walk up to him and ask his name. I saw him try to take a picture of the sunset with a flash. And I remember the orgy where I wasn't the star, even though it was in my apartment. Just give him too much so he'll pass out in the corner. I imagine he lives somewhere in the Southwest, where the crystal meth is cheap and the living's easy, a ranch, but he has internet. One of those video chat rooms where people shoot up in unison, a quantum physics event all around the world. Or he's probably dead. And then these next 2 lines are crossed out. I wonder if when people kill themselves, they don't leave as quickly. They circle around a bit. It's funny when you feel as if you don't want anything more in your life except to sleep, or else to lie without moving. That's when you can hear time sliding past. Thank you.
Hola. Hello.
And you are Alma Birch, right?
I am a Birch.
And that was Tom Cole.
And that's Tom Cole and Cathy Cruz. I didn't want to mess it up.
It's okay.
I'm not the organizer. I'm really thrilled to be here and in this beautiful bookshop, talking about this really beautiful book. And I've been spending a lot of time with the book because I'm one of the curators for the event at the Poetry Project. So I've been trying to read as much of it as I can. And these next couple of poems, they speak to me, and I hope that they speak to you too. It doesn't matter how you fall into light, she said, by Mikaela Oliver. Now approach holiness in memory. Wizard scatters leaves, the little things basking out the window. Air adorned aches to be invented. Vulgarize the living sentence. Trampled daisies, a mine, shake the long night, unplanted placenta, every failed insurrection in cotton fields. I'm where the sun has gone, sugarcane and pathetic. Look, ma, no hands. Bodies jump overboard, taste is addiction enough. When horny, think of sexuality and gods. Less than 100 identified in LA County. A bell tinkles on an ice cream truck. I shouldn't be no ways tired. Tell me it's Saturday. Reason to wear something new. It's all right. Breathe their air. The urge to kiss. All this time, I thought I should have done something else. And when I was a student at New Paltz, a friend of mine gave me all the Bob Kaufman he owned. He said, "You need this." And when I saw that Bob Kaufman was in this incredible anthology, I was so honored to be alongside him. Would You Wear My Eyes by Bob Kaufman. My body is a torn mattress, disheveled throbbing place for the comings and goings of loveless transients. The whole of me is an unfurnished room, filled with dank breath, escaping in gasps to nowhere before completely objective mirrors. I have shot myself with my eyes, but death refused my advances. I have walked on my walls each night through strange landscapes in my head. I have brushed my teeth with orange peel, iced with cold blood from dripping faucets. My face is covered with maps of dead nations. My hair is littered with drying ragweed. Bitter raisins drip haphazardly from my nostrils while schools of glowing minnows swim from my mouth. The nipples of my breasts are sun-brown cockleburrs. Long-forgotten Indian tribes fight battles on my chest, unaware of the sunken ships rotting in my stomach. My legs are charred remains of burnt cypress trees. My feet are covered with moss from bayous flowing across my floor. I can't go out anymore. I shall sit on my ceiling. Would you wear my eyes? Wow. And before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of writing in diners. And I was in a diner on Houston Street. And I wrote this poem. It's called Yesterday I Was. Counting caterpillars with pun, we were reciting lines. Boys, don't cry. Are you a boy or a girl? Do caterpillars ever get asked such questions? Pun was interested in death and burial in New Orleans. I tried to explain it to her. Language can be so futile, the barrier of knowing and not knowing. Don't all butterflies look the same, yet male monarchs have spots? Do butterflies have second-line funerals? A parade of butterflies carrying their ancestors' spirit home as they travel from south to north. I wrote Eileen today. They are in Greece. I asked them if they have been to Lafcadia. I wondered if there was a marker on the spot that Sappho jumped from. I'm sure you've heard about Steve Cannon by now. Thank you.
I'm sort of the comeback kid. I'm going to read I'm going to read a little piece from a writer, well, a friend of mine. Her name is Christine Omarsdottir, Icelandic poet and fiction writer, and I think this piece is remarkable. And then we're gonna talk. You guys are gonna ask us questions, and I'm gonna struggle to answer you. All right, we might talk among ourselves for a moment. up here, not alone on the front, making everybody aware what's going on. I went to Iceland in 1996, and I was in an art opening in a museum. And the thing, it was so weird. It's when I discovered how weird Iceland is, because I would talk to people, and they would say, "Where are you from?" And I'd say, "New York." And they were like, "Yeah, the East Village is really changing." I was like, "Who are you?" They're Vikings. You know, Icelandic people just keep, they all went to college, and either, they went to the School of Visual Arts, or they went in Europe, and then they returned to Iceland, and they go back to, they're kind of amazingly sophisticated, but funny people. So this is an excerpt from Children and Reindeer Woods. The soldiers cross the green meadow. The sun is at its height. Setting down their packs and weapons, they remove their jackets and tie them around their sturdy soldiers' waists. 3 together. 3 white t-shirts and 3 green pairs of pants approaching a farm with a 2-story house that rises from a huge nest of hedges and tall trees. A cow lows in the backyard. 4 or 5 chickens waddle about the property. A dog gets to its feet and watches the garden gate open. 4 children, an older woman and a young man, head out from the house with their hands clasped behind their backs. A moment later, a woman with a red tray comes out after them. A milk bottle, a silver coffee pot, 3 clean glasses, 3 cups, a knife stuck in a thick rye loaf, butter, and freshly boiled eggs for the soldiers. A light breeze makes its way across the yard. One of the soldiers wipes his forehead. Another watches the third, who shakes himself, brushing off goosebumps or a thought. On the east side, beside the gate, a pebble-dashed table is set into the earth. The woman with the red tray heads there. The breeze tugs at the edge of her skirt. The people stand in front of the soldiers, who shuffle their feet in the gravel. One of the soldiers shoots the woman with the tray. The milk bottle and glasses shatter. The coffee pot clatters to the ground. Blood runs from the woman's eyes as she grips the tray tightly and falls. She lies face down in the grass as if resting peacefully on a pillow, and the blood leaks across it. The youngest child runs to her, but is shot on the way. The cow lows in a familiar fashion. The chickens hurry over to look at the bodies. The soldier who fired lowers his weapon. The other 2 shoot the dog, the woman, the man, 2 more children. But the young girl is spared, seemingly without a thought. She lowers her arms to her sides. One soldier shoulders his weapon and takes one of the strutting chickens in his arms. "I've always wanted to hold a chicken," he confesses. The other 2 step cautiously inside the house, weapons raised. Army boots inside the house, bodies too. While he's examining the chicken, petting and caressing it, the girl steals under the bush near the garden gate, into a curved tree bed. Leaves and branches cover the trees like a long grass skirt. "You smell very good, my hen. A much better scent than I expected a chicken would have. My chick." The soldier says, pressing the tip of his nose against the hen's belly. The girl licks the salty earth, decaying leaves, mossy stones, the clods of earth. She stares out from her hiding place as the animal lover prods the chicken's belly, examines its eyes, opens its beak, and inspects the tiny tongue. No teeth. And they call him into the house. The soldier disappears inside, the creature still in his arms. The girl pulls herself deeper into the bed on her stomach, the way reptiles move. The sun shifts. It's 1 o'clock. I feel like I could stop right there. It's a remarkable novel that has the strangest, most kind of beautiful, surprising violence. Like, you're like, why is this happening? And part of it is I never thought of Iceland as a place that was touched by war, but clearly it is, and it's such an amazing kind of memory of what war is, which is completely irrational. And I guess violence in general, right? I mean, like, I feel like, who can understand this moment we're living in the United States, you know? Can we all come up and have a moment together, and then?
Yeah. Why not?
Do we want chairs, or do we want to just stand?
Don't care.
We don't care.
We don't stand. We can
I
stand.
think we'll stand. I think we'll stand. I think we'll stand for a moment.
Multiple mics.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Hilarious moment.
The moment we're in right now? Yeah, this is a hilarious moment. Do you guys feel compelled to say anything at this moment? Because I think we're going to go to you, but I thought there might be a moment in which we might want to talk about. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank these guys for doing this event and being in this book. And I just want to say, I think it's like, because it's so kind of crazy and various, and I mean, like, if you just heard some of the work tonight that's in this, but I mean, you could just live with this book for like a year and keep being sort of surprised and turn a page a day. I mean, I think slow reading, in fact, there's a piece in here by Sparrow about slow reading, in which he talks about reading Moby Dick over a year, and it was just the way to go. I mean, it's like no reason to be intimidated by a large book. You just take a little piece, you know? It's kind of like eating an enormous chocolate bar.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, I thought you guys might want to say something, no? Am I?
Well, I was
I
thinking,
feel like, yeah.
I was, man, give me a mic. Okay, so I was thinking actually about Ambrose Bierce and the Devil's Dictionary, and how this is something that is akin to that in terms of American literature. And you were talking about it being a dictionary earlier. And I was just thinking about this idea of American storytelling, even though the book has other people, but there's a lot of Americans.
There's a lot of Americans
in this book.
Yeah. Just go ahead, say it.
Well, I was just going to say, I know that when I was reading the book, I got excited about so many of the different writers in the book and investigated other work by them, and have gotten to meet many of the writers and bring them into my reading series. So for me, it was really kind of like a great primer and a turn on to writers I didn't know about.
I think pathetic, though, is an American word, and I think that's such a part of the purpose of the book, too, is I feel like it didn't always mean something bad, you know, it got like mean, it's a bullying word, you know, like pathetic, you know, and it stopped meaning pithy, and it just started to mean, you know, like, come on, get in line, get your shit together, get your masculinity over here, get your, you know, I mean, I say this in the introduction, but like, Cindy, what's her name, Cindy Sheehan. Remember Cindy Sheehan, who there was a Camp Kate, like during the Iraq War, there was a woman whose son was killed. And she went, Bush had them all to the White House, and, you know, and then after that he just kept bombing Iraq. And she was just like, by then she was like, my son didn't die for freedom and democracy, he died for oil. And so that she started this thing called Camp Casey, and she just planted herself at the end of Bush's streets. And then 1,500 people joined her, and it just became this thing. And conservative talk hosts were all like, that pathetic woman, you know? And it was really because she asked for too much. It was like a woman's supposed to ask for this much, you know? And if you ask for more, you're just busting the boundaries of the gender, you know? So I think busting boundaries from our, you know, it's sort of a masochism thing. It's sort of like, if you bust your own boundaries, it's a whole different story. And I think in a way, we all do that in our work. Now to you. Does anybody have a question?
For me? No, I just.
No.
Yes.
Oh, there you're so ready.
Do you remember what the first thing you picked was?
Oh, it was Simone Bay. It was Simone Bay.
What?
Because I mean, I just thought why not start with this difficult author, you know? And I picked up this book, and then I immediately found this essay about why she would refuse to get baptized, and I thought, that's crazy, you know? Yeah. And it's funny because each author led to another person. I mean, and part of it being that you've read, you know, I read all of Borges, you know, and then I wanted to read something different after that. And so they each kind of, because it was, you know, it was a reading exercise to do an anthology. It's really, it's kind of, you know, it's like a syllabus for a class that you never have to show up to.
Oh,
But there was one poet who insisted she be in the book. It was really funny. A very prestigious, very successful poet who was like, I have to be in it. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, I have to be in it. I was like, oh my God. And she wound up being like an ad for why, I mean, like I didn't do a call. I didn't put up an ad someplace saying call for pathetic literature. Because I just knew I would get all this crazy shit. I didn't really want to see everybody else's idea of pathetic. I wanted to do my idea of pathetic. And so she then gave me a bunch of so-called pathetic poems, and they were just terrible and stupid. I mean, they were good poems, but I was just like, this is the wrong point, you know?
yeah.
And so then but it was fun because I started looking at her whole work, and she's somebody who likes science too. And so there was this amazing poem that's in the book, so you can figure out who I'm talking about. And she talks about amoebas, kind of how they kind of twitch in relationship to each other. And then in the poem, you know, she does those poems where it's like asterisk, and then you go someplace else and asterisk. And so then the final one was like this office scene where these people were all standing around the water cooler and the Xerox machine, and somebody did something sort of weird and somebody else twitched. And I thought, that's pathetic, you know, because it is the tiniest, it's just a reaction. It's just it's the responsiveness itself is pathetic. I mean, being alive is pathetic in a certain way. You know, it's sort of like because it's a felt phenomena just to be a sentient being. And so I just thought she's just made the scale be like macro, some things that are obviously really over. I mean, I think Valerie Solanas is really over the top pathetic. And then this person, Ray Almontrout, was really, you know, micro pathetic, you know, but thank you for the scale. You know. And one of you guys can answer the question too, so we can become this person back there with the baseball cap. Oh, yeah, you're going to call
Do you
the
want me to
people.
do it?
Yeah, let's do it, yeah,
I
please.
volunteered.
Yeah. Oh, right, bringing the mic
I
over.
love to
Very sexy and powerful. Cathy.
Was there anyone whose work that you put in that they were like, what do you mean it's pathetic?
No, which is so weird. I was waiting for Gwendolyn Brooks's family to say, and there was no problem. I mean, that was the most astonishing thing. Nobody felt at all. I mean, I explained to everybody. I got a little paragraph that seemed to include everybody, you know, and said this is what pathetic means when I asked for work. But there absolutely wasn't. I thought that was a little uncanny. That there was no pathetic blowback. Except, go ahead, yeah, no, you have an answer.
You know, with the Gwendolyn Brooks story about the couple in the movie theater, and the only black couple there,
Right.
that racism is pathetic.
Racism is pathetic. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Very.
Huh. Here comes Cathy.
Could you tell us what you mean by pathetic? What it is that you are asking for when you put out the fielders for it?
Am I doing that, or are you doing? How's that?
I'm trying to do that.
You're a musician. Probably. Yeah, I bet. Well, I think.
You gotta go back.
It goes back.
You gotta step
You have to step.
I have to go back.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You two can just manage my whole life. This is really great. I don't know when to go back. The question was, what is pathetic?
Yeah. What do you mean by pathetic?
Well, I think it's a feeling thing. I think it's really the realm of feeling, and then it's like feeling that conceivably, now it just stopped.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's good. Feeling that would conceivably, by some authority of any projected sort, would say that's too much, or that's not enough, or talk louder, or take it down. You know, just I think the endlessly variability of the human being and their feelings, you know, so it's sort of like, some things are just, like Dodie Bellamy is about, it's called Fat Chance, and it's an early internet story, and it's about like a computer date with a guy who was really large, like, you know, like a really big bodied guy, and she was very into his fat, you know, and it was sort of, so it was like this very bodily kind of thing. And my students, I think it was just this suburban normative thing. They just were like, the reason they felt they were disgusted by it was just like, who wants to hear about sex with fat people? You know, so it was just like, I thought, oh, that's, you know, pathetic then. It just brings up this rise in people. I mean, I think Howell is pathetic. You know, when I think about all the books, it's so interesting that right now we have all these books, like they're not, you know, like all these people over the country who are controlling books that kids can read, right? Yeah. But I think what they're doing is pushing back the pathetic, I think, you know, and I think all the big trials, all the kind of trials about whether, you know, whether this is art or not, all of, with, you know, William Burroughs and all those books were pathetic. They were all pathetic literature, you know? Though actually I didn't think, for my money, I didn't think Burroughs, Ginsberg, yes, Burroughs, no. And I don't think Gertrude Stein is pathetic. But, you know, I could fold anybody in, but my gut was that she is not a pathetic author. So there was something, if you seem too toppy, I thought, you can have, you got plenty of territory, you know.
And that's
What did you say? One more, this is it.
in the hat.
And the hat.
There you go.
Do we want to make sure nobody else has a question? Because
Why Burroughs? Why did you say Burroughs not pathetic?
What's that?
Why did you say Burroughs isn't pathetic?
Oh, I mean, I think he's entirely dominant and privileged.
Oh, okay.
I think, you know, despite the fact, I mean, he loves being a junkie because he, you know, falls back into the you know, the abyss. But really, it's very edited, self-edited. And I'm kind of dying to know what the last. Can we find out what was your final question? Person in the baseball cap.
An extension of that question.
Because you are asking for more, and we want that. Yeah.
Well, it's just it's like an extension of that question, which is like, did you have sort of like private criteria, or was it just like a feeling?
It was a feeling. I was the feeling editor, you know, and it really did seem like as I included something, then it became clearer what the next thing. And they were playing off each other a lot, you know, and that was the way it operated. I mean, it's such a great exercise. It's really fun, you know. And I've had the experience, like, because people were like, no, what does pathetic mean? And then when they would tell me why, but then they would reveal that they had a word that they really liked, you know. And I do think there's a thing, which we all have some words that we're obsessed with, and it would be amazing to sit down and think of 100 writers that kind of elaborate on that word in some, you know, kind of lusty way, or creepy way.
Can I throw in one last?
Yeah, we have to, right? We have to bust, yeah.
Maybe what makes it all.
Because these are the pathetic people. Everybody who came here, if the word appealed to you, you're a little bit complicit in this. But
well, to make your method make sense, if you go back to the ancient Greek, it just means to feel something deeply. So you went with that, right? You went with whatever you felt. And
it's
that's it.
Yeah, no, it's totally Greek. It's totally Greek.
Yeah.
And when I was just in Europe recently, and I really put Europe on this platform, I was like, in, you know, Romance languages, pathetic means something good, but when I got to Germany, it was like, no, pathetic is actually bad here too. And France too, they were like, pathetique. No, you don't want to be called pathetique. Like, so I think it's a global phenomenon. No. Anyway, thank you so much. You guys are so great. Party.
Yeah, downstairs, right?
Yes. Thank you all so much for coming in. Downstairs.